Welcome back. You're watching Startup Central with me, Nantara Rai, working from home. This is the only show of its kind on Indian television dedicated to startups, innovation, technology, disruption. Now, what we'd seen after the Indo-China border disputes was the Narendra Modi government announcing a ban of several Chinese apps citing national security, including the popular TikTok. You'd also seen the likes of PUBG being banned. The national security reason had been invoked, and besides the ownership of these apps, what had the Modi government worried was how a lot of these apps were cloning your phones, were taking permissions, intrusive permissions from users, reading the devices, had the ability to store all of that data, personal data outside of India. They could read your files, photos, contacts, Wi-Fi networks, store it outside India, and even have the capability of modifying and deleting that data. So that's why government sources had told ET Now that even if TikTok's ownership changes, the ban on the app will not be lifted unless it also fixes the security concerns. It had raised almost 50 concerns on those kind of topics. Now what we understand exclusively from our sources is that the Home Minister Amit Shah, as well as the Ministry of Electronics and IT, has received a complaint about one of the banned Chinese app, resurfacing. Call it old wine in a new bottle. It has only changed its name. It is the old app with a new identity and with a new name. Let me take you through those details. So this is a letter which has been written by the Center for Digital Economy Policy Research to the Home Minister Amit Shah, as well as other members of the Modi government, alleging that snack video is actually Chinese and is a mirror of the banned app Kwai. In this letter to the Home Minister, the allegations made are plenty, but basically about how this is a Chinese app that continues to read Indian users' data, be it photographs, contacts, files, even without permission. Whatever is on the device can be read and can be stored outside the country. The second part also, of course, is that snack video, according to this letter and complaint, has become popular with the Indians. So it has topped the charts on the Google Play Store for 15 consecutive weeks. In fact, it has also been downloaded more than 10 crore times. So I'm actually going to reach out to the author of this complaint. Joining us right here on Startup Central is Jayajit Bhattacharya, the president of the Center for Digital Economy Policy Research. Thanks a lot for joining us here on Startup Central. So, we have seen the government ban Chinese apps in phases. And I do remember in the second phase, it had identified VPNs for TikTok. And at that time also, there had been concerns that would we see Chinese apps resurfacing with new names and new identities. Can you tell me, when you write a letter to the Home Minister Amit Shah and senior members of the Modi government, how are you so convinced, on what basis are you saying that snack video is Chinese, and it doesn't matter if it's Chinese, that it's actually a banned Chinese app?
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward, actually, Narendra, is that if you go to the old app, which is Kwai, and if you go to kwai.com, you will be able to click a link for the Kwai older video, the older application. If you click there, it actually takes you to snack video. So clearly there is a website link. Now, if you go back to the LinkedIn profiles of the employees, you will see that all the employees who were there in the older version of Kwai have simply changed their profile, and now they're part of snack video. There are multiple such evidences that we have presented, and it's not a complaint, it's a support for the government, because clearly the government has taken up the initiative on behalf of the entire country to make sure that we are secure from a cybersecurity perspective. And clearly it's an extremely challenging task to do that. In fact, way back in July, I had written a detailed article of the ways and means in which all of these apps will try to come back. So from the civic society perspective, it's our responsibility to support the government and to bring out any such new apps which are coming up, which is a danger to us and our strategic concerns. And that's merely what we have done. And it's very, very clear. A very limited research has brought out the fact that these two applications are virtually the same, and the owners are the same. And more importantly, the owners are also part of the Communist Party of China. And that brings us into a very, very delicate situation, because all the data of the 50 million daily users and their Indian users is going straight into the hands of adversaries, which we do not want to have at this point in time. So it's a very, very serious concern that we have now, especially given the fact that there are 50 million daily users. Imagine if the son or the daughter of the general who's involved in the situation that we face in Galavan Valley and the area around is using snack video, then the adversaries exactly get to know what the general's child or the colonel's child is doing and can use that to compromise our situation. And therefore, it becomes an extremely delicate situation.
Let me interrupt there. Okay, I'd like to interrupt there because we also see advisories for the Javans on the kind of apps that they can use and not use. Remember the entire case of Truecaller, how it had made its way into that list. But my other question to you now is that this app, which is becoming popular, and it's part of your complaint that, it's been downloaded 10 crore times, it has topped the charts on Google Play Store 15 million times, of 15 consecutive weeks. My question is that it can't possibly be so simple that a banned app just changes the name, its employees just start calling themselves, they're part of a new name, and it's up and running. That would also mean that there are serious loopholes and lapses on our side.
Yeah, unfortunately so. That it is unfortunately that simple to set up another entity and to basically run the show, as long as you got the capital on your side, because you can pump the capital into having a larger digital presence and to increase the digital advertisements that you do for your app, and end up getting the same number of users that we're talking about. So clearly, it is unfortunately very simple to replicate an app and to just relaunch it. You can actually launch it as an Irish app. You can launch it as a Singaporean app. In fact, many of the apps that we are tracking and we are observing, many of the Chinese banned apps have simply shifted their headquarters to Singapore and are now calling themselves as Singaporean apps. What we need to be very careful about is who is the ultimate beneficiary of all of those organizations, which is what actually the Singapore government itself tracks. But we also need to have a very robust information system in which we get to know that which of these companies which have relocated themselves, who are the ultimate beneficiaries. In case of snack video, a very limited research shows that the ultimate beneficiaries are still the Chinese, who are actually linked to the Chinese Communist Party.
The problem that the government had when it was banning apps wasn't just the ownership of these apps. It was also what these apps were allegedly doing on the mobile devices, taking permissions for all kind of intrusive features to read into your mobile devices, to have the capabilities of modifying it, and to store all that personal data, information, Wi-Fi networks, all of that outside of the country. That's how national security had been invoked. Jayajit, you're telling me about one instance and also highlighting how these apps are just changing their headquarters, whether it is to Singapore, all of that. Can you share with us that in your dialogues with the government, what is their plan of action? How are they going to, because for them, the bigger problem more than ownership was also what was happening with Indian users' data.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're bang on. All of these apps are actually capturing all kinds of sensitive information. It can record you. It can take your videos, even when you're not aware of it. It can overlay applications. It can go into hiding in your phone while being still on. It can take your location. It can virtually do everything and know everything about you, which is what makes it very dangerous, especially when it goes on scale, because it's then capturing the information of every single citizen in this country. From the government's perspective, again, to be fair, it's very, very difficult to keep track of all of these apps unless the businesses, the civic society, and the general society keeps coming back and informing the government as to which are the new apps that are coming in, which are of an origin which is adversarial in nature, and which is capturing information which is dangerous for us. And for the government alone to do that, it is a tall order, because these are new technologies that are coming up. And there is no single, silver bullet to actually control all of these apps. So what we really need to look at is which are the the apps which have got large adoption, and then check whether they are being misused and whether they are collecting information which they should not be collecting, and whether they're sending that information to places that they should not be sending that information to.
So when you are an independent think tank trying to figure out who it is that is misusing the Indian users' data, collecting all of this, it's also a day where we're talking very seriously about data breaches. It's happened to one of India's largest pharmaceutical companies. You've had over the weekend a case about how on Twitter, Leh was being geotagged as part of the People's Republic of China, with experts saying that it's actually to do with the GPS coordinates on the phone and the apps you may have on the phone. So, it is a problem, and maybe a big problem that we don't talk enough about, the breach of data. So as an independent think tank, when you talk to the government about this, are you also being fair and equitable in making sure that the Indian apps and the Indian startup ecosystem are also not reading all of our information like this? Because it can't be just about ownership. It's also what can be done with it later.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. Any app could be collecting information that they still don't need, and which is why the privacy data protection bill is very urgently needed to be converted into an act. The only difference is that the Indian startups will not be using the data, hopefully, or the possibility of them using it against the state and against the Indian people is much more limited. And we have really not seen such a case happening. And there should not be any motivation to do that. But clearly, when the origin of that app or that device for that matter, because Xiaomi phones were actually showing Arunachal Pradesh as part of China, apparently as it came out in the media, then clearly the data that comes that goes to the adversarial nations are of far more greater concern than the data that's been collected by the Indian startups. Although both are not something to be done, but one has got severe national security implications, the other has got privacy implications. And that's really the differentiation to be made. So we are waiting for the Privacy Act to come in. And once they come in, we'll also be looking at the Indian apps and see what are the kind of violations that they are doing. But in the meantime, we need to be very aware of what is the impact that such violations are having on the national security. And that's a limited point that we're looking at right now. It's not from a privacy perspective, because we're waiting for the privacy law to come in. And therefore, we are focusing on what the non-Indian startups are doing. But moving forward, as and when the national privacy data policy comes in and the PDP bill comes in, we will be looking at the local Indian startups and see what kind of data that they are collecting.
Okay. I'm going to let you go at that, Jayaji. Thanks so much for joining us here. That's a new complaint that has been sent to the Narendra Modi government about how Chinese apps are resurfacing. These are the banned apps, and they continue to read the users' devices, Indian devices, for the very reason they had been banned. It wasn't just about the country of origin of these apps, but also what they were doing with Indian users' data. Thanks a lot for joining us right here on this edition of the Startup Central. We're going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned. On the other side, some food for thought, literally and figuratively. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes.